I would like went from one extreme to the other. There was no real yeah, my perspective was not in reality necessarily. So depending on who I was talking to, I didn't deserve to be talking to them, or they didn't deserve to be talking to me. And it just sucked. It was a horrible way to live, and like I was stoned all the time. Anytime I meet somebody from that I haven't seen since back then, like, oh, I met you at A Life once. The first thing I do is say, I'm so sorry, because I just assumed that I was a dick, because I just remember being like so unhappy all the time. But people were like, no, you were nice, and I was like, maybe on the outside again, I'm like American Psycho, I was not like, hey, how you doing? But not inside. It was just like, can't wait to get away from this person and like go get high or something. But I'm glad that like people were able to enjoy me. So back then, I don't know. I felt like I was lucky to be around people who were doing those shit. I recognized that, like all the stuff that A Life was doing, Clayton, like Futura, Espo, Todd James, like all those dudes, all the older graffiti writer dudes who were like doing shit. I can see because their stories had already like changed, and you can see that even cause like Cap, like people who were just around before me were always when you're growing up, the older people are the ill ones, right? They're the people you look up to. And so I could recognize it in them. They saw something in me that I can see in younger people now, but I couldn't see in myself at the time. So no, it didn't seem ill. Plus, I didn't know that anything was gonna like connect, right? People would be like, come in from other countries all the time and be like, oh, like I've heard of you, like at A Life, and I'd be like, okay, but not really know. That happened kind of often, and I would just whatever. I don't know, I guess, and I know that doesn't happen to everybody. So like, that's kind of cool, but like still no perspective really, right? Until I started traveling more. And then I was like, oh, this is Milan. Like, oh, and everybody, I see people I know because they came to me. I'm like, oh, this is so sick. Going to Japan all the time and then like seeing people that I know from here. And it's like, oh, this is sick. The world, yes, like I'm super lucky to have been born and raised in New York and have my whole story be told there because like I'm literally in contact with like people from all over the world. This is fucking amazing. And that was like even before the internet really started to jump off with like free texting and everything and like broadband. Early internet doesn't count because we weren't really connected like that. But yeah, like it took a while for me to appreciate what was happening. I went through a dark period where I was just like hiding in the Bronx in the River Park Towers, which is like, it was like, whatever. There was a dark period. Just to answer your question, no, I didn't really, really appreciate it. I bounced from being, I didn't bounce from being, I was the biggest piece of shit in the center of the universe, to use like a phrase that I've heard.
Yeah, when from an outsider's perspective, when I look at and hear about all that, I think about like there's a saying in like martial arts where they're like, there's black belts and then there's black belts. And I kind of think of it in terms of like graffiti, like there's like New York graffiti crews, which there's so many, and then there's New York graffiti crews. And out of all the New York graffiti crews, pretty much uncontestably, the most influential one, the one that's known and is IRAK. And
it's just so crazy. That's so crazy.
And I've talked to a lot of people about this, and
that's insane, actually. So you're talking about, did you ever recognize when I'm able to recognize this right now, that this is happening right now in the moment, and it's crazy. It's overwhelming. That's like insane.
Yeah, and like the funny thing to me is that
no one's ever said that to me before.
Oh, really? Yeah, the funny thing to me is the fact that I think that what I just said, in my opinion, is a fact. And yet when I talked to Rehab and now talking to you, both of you kind of were like, we didn't really realize. And another thing that I think is like pretty inspiring is that it was truly organic. Like you had zero plan. You wrote graffiti and chilled every day. And just through like you said, everything's connected. All these people are connected. Everything just is one. Mm-hmm. It's somehow like turned into this crazy shit. To me, that's insane that like it can work from an outsider's perspective. Like I said, I know living it was a different story, but it can seemingly work so perfect and ideally when there was no plan and there was no like real like intention, like, oh, we're racking, let's call the crew this. And then somehow now like everybody knows about it. Like to me, like I can't like I feel like, and I'm definitely wrong in saying this, but when I was like 12 years old and I first found out about like what Iraq was, I was like, okay, sick. I'm gassed because I'm like the only person who's my age, like who knows about this.
Mm-hmm.
And now like I walked by Labor the other day and there was like, I was with him and I was like, oh, look, an Iraq tee. Like, isn't that funny? Like a bunch of skateboarders and like we grew up skating, like, but no skater knew really what that like was. And now everybody knows what it is. Like, what is that? When you look at the trajectory of your life, like what do you think about when you think about that?
So that's a really good question. That could be a podcast in and of itself. I should probably start doing podcasts again. But contrary to how it seems, I don't like hearing myself talk. But so back in the day, everything was like in its separate. It was like a club with different rooms of like music, right? It was like skateboarding was over here, graffiti was over there, hip hop was over here. Like everything was separate. And by over here, I mean like those friends like this, these friends like that. Those, they were not the same group of people, right? It wasn't homogenized. It wasn't mixed in. Maybe you had a skateboard friend that liked hip hop and maybe you had a graffiti friend that skateboarded, maybe, but probably not. So we were like those kids that liked all of it. We like hardcore music. We like fucking fashion stuff. We like fine art stuff. We like low art stuff. We like, it's like, there's all of it is dope. Like, homeless people on the street and like, we just saw like this thing, right? Like how everything is basically connected and is dope and there's creativity and everything and like everything informs everything else, but it wasn't like the way that the world worked, right? So, once I heard that there were like I would see like certain graffiti writers up at skate spots and I'd be like, yo, that guy must skate. Oh my God, like that's ill. It freaked me out. Or like, you would see like a skateboarder at an art show, right? And it would be like, yo, like that freaked me out. That shit was not like, because now you see like, skateboarders have art shows, Sure, there was like a Legend Gallery where it was like all skateboarders showed up at those Aaron Rose shows or whatever. And, certain like things, but like it was rare. It wasn't like how it is now. Yeah, I just I'm trying to remember the question so I can properly put. I know what I want to talk about, but what was it again? It was
just like, what do you think? Seeing as Iraq got to the level that it did, but while it was happening, it wasn't really like a plan. When you look back on the path of your life and all the ups and downs that you've lived, like all the lessons, experiences, like good times, bad times, what do you think about all that now that it's all panned out the way it has?
I don't know what to think. That I'm extremely lucky to be alive and to not just to be alive, but to be in the position I'm in to be able to appreciate things, right? And because not everybody makes it. The herd thins, right? Immensely more than you think it is going to. Like just people don't make it, right? And then it's like, why am I here? Like I'm not like they're way better, smarter, iller. Like why, So, which is not just because as humans we can propose questions doesn't mean that they deserve to be answered, right? So it's like, okay, whatever. Stop asking questions that don't have any real answers, right? Like you're just here, right? So what do you do with that? You're lucky, right? So kind of like give back, like tell people about the people that aren't here that didn't make it, like your story. Use your story to help other people. How I got from there to here, that helps people. All that kind of stuff. Am I going to ask you what the question was again? Yes.
The thing is the question was just very broad. I'm just asking like what goes through your mind when you look at all the ups and downs and then where you, not that your story's over, but where you landed today.
Yeah, no, it's insane. I can't really comprehend it. So I got sober like 4.5 years ago, right? And it's like, I wasn't the drug addict. I didn't have needles sticking out of my arm. I was the one that kicked needles out of people's hands, and was like, fuck that shit. Just weed and coke. What else do you need? Don't be a dick. And so I wasn't the one with the drug problem. But when I did get sober, my life got immediately better, right? So, and now I realize what happened when I did drink was gross. Like I had to call a coke dealer. And even before I got my butt in the seat or the beer touched my lips, I was like, so alcoholic. But my life got way better once I got sober, right? So I just like to I'm like, dude, I really should be dead all the time. I have 13 screws in my leg, right? And a metal titanium bar on my ankle, holding my ankle together from sketching back to A Life from Canal Street, Charlie Goldcap, getting fronts, right? Like fronts in my mouth, like sketching, car accident crazes, like my foot hanging on by the skin and everything. And I'm trying to like get back to the store and some like fireman like pushes me down. It's like, I call it, it's like a whole thing. I should be dead is the long and short of that, right? I should, many times over. So I'm just fucking like, the story is really dope. It entertains me sometimes. Like when people ask me questions like this, because I don't really think about it in completion all the time. So it's a fucking crazy story. I'm happy to, like, no one survives their story. We all die, but like, I'm happy that I survived this long. This is great. So just that, so like, I'm grateful, long and short. I'm just grateful, right? To, because some people that live, right, don't really get anything out of it, right? They go through all this shit and it's just like, poor me. Look at all the shit I've been through. Look what God did to me, man. Or like, you know, my mom or like the cops or this. Like everybody's got shit. Like everybody's bringing shit with them. Nobody escapes childhood unscathed. Like we all have mad baggage, right? What are you going to do with it, right? You're going to carry it around forever? Because that shit's heavy. Like, you know, for me, I'm like, no, like, okay, like, what do how can I use this to grow or something? Or like, can this benefit me somehow, right? Kind of a thing. So, but that wasn't always the case. I was a dick for super long because look what God did to me kind of thing. Even though I was an atheist, it was like, you know, fuck everybody all the time. But, you know, perspective changed. So I'm just grateful that I'm at that point mentally that I can actually, make something that people appreciate other people, be cool with myself, right? Because that was the whole thing, is like being cool with myself. Now I can be cool with other people and I can see that people are more comfortable around me. That makes me feel good about myself. Cycle, right? Mm-hmm. So that part is what kind of like really super important to me, more than like the IRAK thing and like that, how that is like cool, whatever. Me as a person, not being such a derelict and actually being able to appreciate my life and realizing how lucky I am and being able to like make nice things that I appreciate. And lucky because tons of people make great stuff, right? There's tons of artists and musicians that make great stuff and nobody gives a shit, right? So I'm lucky that other people know about me and like appreciate anything and like that. I'm just lucky so many times over. Sometimes I feel like I won the New York lottery and that like I grew up here and I get to still live here. And like, I'm like, you know, I have a decent apartment and it's like in a nice neighborhood. And I'm like, that's a fucking like rare. Like the people that I went to high school with, I don't know where the fuck they're scattered about. G is the only one I know who still lives in New York and is doing well. Like everybody else is a derelict. Like, so to be able to be together mentally enough to like not like torpedo my life, you know, or like feel sorry for myself all the time, or like be in resentment to like those 5 people that will always like whatever, they better run. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like my life is like chill today.
Yeah.
I'm like, could you do this fucking podcast for these? It's like, no, like, I get kids want me to do a podcast or like that's awesome or whatever. Like, you know, show up for stuff, you know, just don't be in your head all the time. Like these little lessons, like, you know what I mean? Because not everybody my age gets to. When I was a kid, a 40 or 50-year-old dude was a fucking dick in New York. You were scared of older grown men. They were like, they have grown men muscles. And you were like scared of them because they were fucking dicks and people were fighting all the time in the street. And like, you were just scared of like some like older dude flipping out on you. And it was like, you know, or the wrong kind of older dude. And it was just like, so I'm glad that it's like, you know, I feel young, like, you know, I'm like, you know, mentally I feel like, you know, mature or more mature. It's just like chill. Like I'm really happy. And plus that other shit, the IRAK stuff and like the fact that I get to make art and create things and people like are down for like, you know, my shenanigans now and they support me. And it's like, oh, this is also fucking nice. Like, that's what I mean. Like today is the best day of my life. It's like, yeah, I get to like appreciate all that shit. It's fucking dope.